Doing tonight?
I'm trying to find the that one you're working on before. Right now. Make life easier. Hold on. I'm assuming it's this one here, hopefully. Yeah, this is it. Alright. Let me tell you this one.
Go ahead.
Fine. Okay. So the first problem we have here, I think it's FOG, like fog again.
Okay.
I think that's one where
They give you the individual functions?
yeah. So this function we have right now is sorry, it takes forever. It takes forever to load. So we have f of x equals 4x plus 2, and g of x equals x squared minus 3x minus 6. And we have to find the GOF of 6.
What's GOF mean?
Say what?
What does that mean? GOF. I know what it means. I'm asking you.
It's a g of the f equation, right?
G of f of x. That's what it means. Right?
Yeah.
And written exactly like that. Both parentheses are needed. Okay.
G of f of x. Okay.
Yeah. So translate that. What does G of f of x mean?
Do we plug in that the f of x formula right there?
Uh-huh. That's the way all this stuff works, is once you identify something, you just plug it in.
Okay.
Now, what is...
Now you plug in that equation for the x's in the g of x equation, right?
Exactly. So tell me what to write for off.
So we'd get, let me get some paper so I can write this down too. It's easier for me to verbalize and I write it down.
You know, I would actually prefer if you just verbalize it.
No, I do, but like it helps with my process of like verbalizing it when I write it down too.
Okay.
So we'd have a g equal, no, we have 4x plus 2 squared, right?
In parentheses, squared.
Yeah, in parentheses.
I have to specify parentheses. That's why I like you to verbalize them. Is because I can tell whether you're doing it right or not.
Okay. And then minus 3, parentheses, 4x plus 2.
Right.
Minus 6.
All right. Now.
And then do we do FOIL for that first one?
Yeah, we do need to simplify this. And the reason is that I'm going to end up with an x term on this first thing that's being squared. And I'm going to end up with an x term over here in the middle term. And I'm going to be able to combine those x terms. So let's go ahead and distribute the 3 and square the first term. Square the first term, what do you get?
We get parentheses 4x plus 2 and times parentheses 4x plus 2.
Now do that multiplication. What do you get?
Okay, hold on, it'll take me just a minute. Give me a second. So we have 16x squared plus 8x plus 8x plus 4. So we have 16x squared plus 16x plus 4.
Now distribute the 3.
Distribute the 3, so then we have negative 12x plus, or negative, or it's minus 6, minus 6.
Okay.
So then we get the full equation.
Like terms. So you always only have the first term once. So we don't have any other x squared. Now how many total x's do we have?
2.
What do they total? Combine them.
They 4.
So the next
4x.
term is plus 4x. Now combine all three numbers.
And we have, so is that negative 12 plus 4? So then we have 8. Negative 8, I mean.
Negative 8. And there's your answer. That's what G of f is. In other words, gof is always that, and fog is always f of g of x.
Oops, I accidentally put a comma in there. Hold on. So it's 16x squared plus 4x minus 8.
Uh-huh.
It's saying that's not right. Wait, it says simplify our answer. Is that simplified?
It is. You can factor a 4 out, but there's no need to do so if you don't have to. It doesn't accomplish anything.
I'm pretty sure it would say factor it out too if I needed to. So I don't know. It says it's wrong.
You want to show me? You want me to make you the presenter? Oh, can I make you the presenter when you're on your cell phone? I guess so, huh?
I mean, you can. I can just do that video share thing again too. But I typed in that equation, and the bottom it says g. Oh wait, no, it's g of f of 6. It's GOF of 6 that equals blank.
Okay. So
my bad.
What we want, I think you said that, I just didn't hear it. So g of f is what I have circled. That's the g of f function. You can evaluate it at whatever number you want. They want you to evaluate it at 6, then plug in 6 and come up with an answer.
So we get 16 parentheses 6 squared plus 4 parentheses 6 minus 8. So 16 squared, I can't do that in my head. Let me use my calculator real quick.
You shouldn't do it in your head. You should always have a calculator in front of you when we do a session.
Yeah, okay. So we have 16 times 36 plus 30, no, that's 28. I have my calculator right here. Alrighty, so 24 minus 8. I can get my calculator in my bag, that is. Alrighty, so then we have 16 times 36. 16 times 36 is 576. 176 plus 24 minus 8. Plus 24 minus 8. Yeah, it's 592.
Correct.
592. Okay, so for the next one.
Okay. You understand the difference between what gof of x is. That's what
I understand that.
But you can say gof of 1, gof of 0, gof of 6, any number you want. In other words, once you have the function, then you can substitute, you can evaluate it wherever they want.
Okay.
Okay, what do you got next?
Next one is, given that f of x equals 2x plus 1, f of x equals 2x plus 1, find the FOF of negative 3.
FOF?
Mm-hmm. F of f, pretty much.
Right.
That's what I meant, of 3.
Okay, so first of all, what do I want to put for x? What is
f of x equation?
What is f of x? That's what we're doing.
So we put in 2x plus 1.
Okay, and now what are we going to do?
Are we gonna substitute it in for x?
Substitute what in?
The whole equation, correct?
2x plus 1 is what I want you to say. You're going to substitute 2x plus 1 into the f function wherever you see x. So what does that translate to? Tell me what to write.
So we'd have 2 parentheses 2x plus 1 plus 1.
You got it. Simplify that.
Okay, so then we'd have 4x plus 4 plus 1, which we'd have 4x plus 5.
Almost.
4. Almost. 4x plus 3. Yeah.
See why?
Why is it 3? Oh, yeah, I see why.
That's 4x, that's 2, not 4.
Yeah, my bad. I just got...
Okay, now if that's what f of f is. That's f of x. So if you want to figure out what minus 3 is, what's the answer?
Figure out what minus 3 is. We'd have to substitute
f of minus 3.
We'd have to substitute negative 3 in for the x spot, right?
Yep.
So it'd be 4 parentheses negative 3 plus 3.
Correct.
Should get negative 12 plus 3, which is 9. Negative 9, that is.
Got it.
Okay. Negative 9. So it says find the fog of x and the gof of x in the domain of each. So in the equations it gives us our f of x equals x plus 6 and g of x equals x minus 6.
Okay, let's do the first one. What's fog? And give it to me.
So that's
steps. In other words, what
so
is
fog is
going to be? F of what?
f of x of x. F of x.
No, that's f of f. Fog is f of
f. Oh, f of g of x.
Okay, what's g of x?
G of x is x minus 6.
Okay, now answer what that is.
So then we plug that one into we plug the x minus 6 into the x position, right?
Into which function?
Into the g function.
No, into the f function.
Oh, into the f function, so we'd get x minus 6 plus 6.
Okay.
And then can we add, yeah. So then we just get x. It'd just be x, wouldn't it?
So fog is just x. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about f and g?
They cancel each other out.
They're inverses.
Or they equal 0.
One is the inverse of the other. The definition of inverse is if you take the composite, you get x. And to prove it, when we take g of x, that has to give us x. So what do I write over here? What goes in for the x? Or what goes in the print?
It would be x plus 6.
And what's that equal to?
And then it would be x because it's the inverse, like you said.
Hold on. No, I want you to do the math. What is g of x plus 6? We don't know it's the inverse yet. I mean, I think it is.
Oh, yeah.
But the question was not, are these inverses? The question is, what is fog and what is gof? So we have to do both. We're doing gof now.
Okay. Okay, well, you'd plug the x plus 6 into the g equation on the x, so it'd be x plus 6 minus 6.
Which is equal to x.
Yeah.
So when fog is equal to x, and when gof is equal to x, then you can say g of x is the inverse of f of x. And f of x is also the inverse of g of x. That is the definition of inverse. When you take the fog, you got to get x. And when you take the goth, you
Okay.
got to get x. If you don't, they are not inverses of one another. Period.
Alrighty.
Okay. Now,
The next one we have is fog and goth, domain of each, f of x plus 6.
hold on.
F of x, okay. Or no, it's f of x
What?
equals x plus 6.
Okay.
And then g of x equals x minus 6.
We just did that one.
Oh, this is the same one? And another question.
No?
So would this be, it'd just be x? Yeah.
But there's still,
never mind.
oh, the last question, it asked for domain or not? No,
Yeah, that was.
I don't remember
Okay.
what the last question asked, but
And it says the domain of the fog of x is blank.
on the
It
last
says type your answer. Yes, and it says type your answer in interval notation.
okay, what is it? If we back up, here, I can back up. We got fog is equal to x. What's the domain of that?
It's it has to equal x, right?
What is the domain of that function? In other words, what values can you plug in for x? Can you plug in any number you can think of?
You can.
Without
It's not a real number.
Without violating, yeah. Just the question you always have to ask yourself about domain is what numbers can I plug in for x that don't violate math rules? Math rules are you can't divide by 0 and you can't take the square root of negative numbers. So for the moment, that's the only two rules you have to even consider. Are we dividing by 0 or taking square roots with fog?
Okay. Are we dividing by 0, taking square roots of frogs? So.
Is there anything x cannot be? Tell me a number that x can't be.
It can't be 6, can it?
Sure.
Because then it would.
Sure.
All right.
It can be all real numbers. In other words, we're not dividing and we're not taking square roots. When you're not dividing and you're not taking square roots, then domain is usually all real numbers, which in interval notation is minus infinity to plus infinity.
Okay.
Same thing for goth. It's the same function. They're both x.
They're both x. Okay.
They both equal x. Fog equals x, goth equals x, and when something equals x, you can plug in any number you want for it. So both of those domains on the previous function were all real numbers. Okay.
Okay.
Now, they got another question regarding the same two functions?
No, that was it. It was just extended on. I just didn't read it right.
Okay. So what's the next question?
Next one is f of x equals 9 over 1 minus 2x.
Immediately, we see there's a domain restriction there.
Which is, it has to be greater than 2 or 0, right?
Cannot divide by 0. So whatever makes the bottom, the entire denominator 0, that's what x cannot be. So if I want to solve for the domain of just f of x, then I do this. Make that not equal to 0. Well, when I solve that, I get x cannot be 1/2. That is the only value that x cannot be.
Okay.
For the f
And then
function, what's the g function?
Is g of x equals 1 over x.
What's the domain restriction there?
It can't be 0.
Correct. So x, all reals except 0. And I know they wanted an interval notation. So give me the interval notation on the g function. Or
On the g function.
I'll help you out.
Okay.
Now, what goes in the parentheses?
It would be, would you have all the real numbers, right?
In interval notation,
Except for
you
0.
don't use that. Remember, there
Okay.
are 3 or 4 different ways to explain domain. But when they say they wanted an interval notation, there's only one interval notation. This is what it is over here. What goes in the parentheses on the left?
1/2 equals x, or...
Oh, that's the f function. I'm talking about the g function. I'm going to do the easy one first.
Okay.
So how do I write that in interval notation? How do I write all real numbers except 0?
All real numbers except 0.
How do you write it in interval notation?
Yeah.
Well, start from the left, the far left on the number line. What's the far left on the number line?
For this problem, it would just be
all problems.
0.
No, a number line begins on the far left at negative infinity.
All right.
What's it go up to? But it can't equal.
0.
Okay.
No, it goes up.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
In combination with, now what's the rest of it?
Then it'd be 0 positive infinity, right?
Yep. That is the domain of g of x.
Okay.
Now let's write the domain of f of x in interval notation also. This time I'm going to let you do it.
Okay. So is this one, this is negative infinity 0?
Is it 0? What is it that x can't be?
It can't be anything, it can't be anything under 0, right? It's all real numbers except 0?
It's all
1/2
except that.
Okay.
You see that it can be negative, right?
I do understand that, yeah.
Okay. There's only one number it cannot be, and that is 1/2.
Okay.
So the question is, how do I write that in interval notation? Well, over here on the right, there was only one number it couldn't be, and that was 0. So use the same process to do it for the f function. It's negative infinity to something combined with something to positive infinity. Well, what's the something?
1/2.
Mm-hmm. What that says is all numbers except 1/2. What this says over here is all numbers except 0.
All right. I think that's starting to make sense.
Next question. Because they're probably going to say something like, what's the domain of f divided by g or fog? I don't know. What's the next part of it? Is all we did was figure out the domain of each function.
That was it. That was the domain of each function.
All right. Because a lot of times when they make a composite function, when you do fog, it's a different domain. But one of the key things to remember is that you always use the more restrictive domain. If f of x has a restrictive domain and g of x has a restrictive domain, and yet f of g of x does not, I have to use the restrictive domain. In other words, x, no matter what my composite function is, x can definitely never be equal to 1/2 nor 0. That carries forth no matter what I come up with for a composite function. My composite function might be x plus 2. Okay, in other words, it might be something very normal to where all real numbers, but not so. When you are creating a composite function, you use the maximum restriction of domain.
Maximum restriction of domain. Okay. So, right. Oh, yeah, never mind. We have to find the fog, too. So, in that case. So, fog would just be
f of
the
y.
g function plugged into the x function.
Give me everything to write. I don't want you to give me an English explanation.
Okay.
I want you to give me a mathematical explanation. What,
So we'd have.
What does fog mean?
It's a f of g of x.
Okay, now fill in the g of x function so that I can write f of something.
So we have f of 1 over x.
Okay, and then tell me what that's equal to.
And then we have, which equals 9 over 1 minus 2 parentheses 1 over x.
Okay, actually, yes. Okay. Now,
and then
that's a little harder than one would think. Not really. I mean, I can simplify that. It's just algebra, simplifying it.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about the domain of this new function.
Okay.
What can x not be?
0, right?
That's one thing it can't be, because then I'd be dividing by 0. What else can it not be?
1/2. Because the domain down there that's one of the restrictions there, but does it change?
To figure out what x cannot be in the composite function, I'm going to set that equal or not equal to 0.
Okay.
Well, clearly x can't be 0 because that would make 1 over x undefined.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another number that's going to make this entire denominator 0. And that number is 2. You see why? If x is 2, then my entire denominator
then it would cancel.
minus 1.
Yeah, I get it. It would just cancel out, so I understand that too.
So x also cannot be 2. So that's my new domain of the composite function, but I still have this x can't be 1/2 either, so I have to include that. So in other words, you never lose restrictions, you only gain them. When I took the composite function, I still have the restriction that it can't be 0. I still have the restriction that it can't be 1/2. And I have a new restriction that it can't be 2. So tell me how to write that in interval notation. It's 3 intervals.
Okay.
Here, I'm going to write it like this. It's 3 intervals.
Would we have
the beauty of interval notation is no matter how many intervals you have, you can write it.
Would you have a negative infinity in the first spot?
Always. Well, not always. There was one case where x had to be greater than -9. So we're not going to start at negative infinity. But here, there's only 3 numbers that it can't be. So yes, you're going to end up with negative infinity on the left and positive infinity on the far right. Now, fill in everything else. What number goes here?
For the first parenthesis set, would it be 0?
Okay. What number goes in the middle?
Would it be 2?
Well, it would actually be...
Or would it be 0?
To 1/2.
0 to 1/2. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I was wrong. There's going to be 4 interval notations. Let me rewrite it again. Okay, so we got minus infinity to 0. Can't be 0. Combined with any number between 0 and 1/2. Can't be either 0 or 1/2. Combined with 1/2 to what?
Positive infinity?
It's this one right there.
2.
And then finally combined with what? There's 4 intervals on this one.
Is that 2 positive infinity now?
Yeah. So there's your interval notation. And like I said, there's lots of ways to express domain. To me, the easiest way to express this domain would be to say all real numbers except 0, 1/2, or 2.
Okay.
So sometimes there's shorter ways than interval notation to express something. This was quite complicated. We had 4 intervals here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is there another part to that problem?
No, all it says, yeah, I think
That
that's
was
it for
just
that one.
log. Did they want you to do Goff also?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
So
So
Goff,
is that the fog interval then?
what's that?
So that's the f of g interval, right? F of g interval?
That's the
Is that long
FG domain.
domain? Okay.
This thing down here in interval notation. Well, not that thing, the thing below it. In interval notation, that's the domain for fog. Not for Goff,
Okay.
for fog. Now, for Goff, tell me f of x again. I apologize that my eraser doesn't work on this thing.
F of x.
What's f of x?
It's 9 over 1 minus 2x.
What's g of x? 1 over.
So, yeah, g of x is 1 over x.
Okay, so what is Goff?
Goff is g of f of x,
Keep going.
which is g of 9 over 1 minus 2x.
Hold on.
So then,
Okay, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
and we get 1 over 9 over 1 minus 2x. Parentheses.
Just exactly like that.
Yeah.
Now, how do I simplify that?
Would you simplify, or would you square root maybe?
No, you flip the denominator and multiply. In other words, you simplify it by doing how you divide by fractions. When you are dividing by a fraction, even if there's a variable in it, you flip the denominator and multiply. So this turns out to be 1 minus 2x over 9. However, it's not quite that simple. Because if that's my answer, there's no domain restrictions on that answer. None.
Mm-hmm.
X could be anything. So I have to go back and make sure that I bring in the domain restrictions I have from the original 2 functions. Well, this first f function means x cannot be equal to 1/2. And this g function means x cannot be equal to 0. Well, I haven't picked up any additional domain restrictions. So my answer is all real numbers except x cannot be equal to 1/2 or 0.
Real x cannot be equal to 1/2 or 0. Okay. Could you go back up to that huge 4 chain one we did?
Mm-hmm.
Like that 4, let's see one. Like halfway. I'm almost through with it.
That one there?
Yeah. And it's
Okay.
1 over
Tell me
2.
how you would write this one in interval notation. What is all real numbers except 1/2 and 0? How does that come out in interval notation?
So would you have parentheses, union parentheses?
Start from the far left.
Okay, so we have negative infinity, correct?
Uh-huh. To what?
And then 0.
Good. Parentheses or bracket?
Parentheses.
What next?
And then the union. And then parentheses 1/2
No.
infinity or 0? Or is it
0. And
0
pick
infinity?
up where you left off. because it can be
Okay.
1/4, right?
Yeah, that's
It can be
true.
1/10, it can be 1/50, it can be 1/4. It just can't be 1/2. So it can be everything up to 1/2. What next?
Okay. And then it would be union again. And then 1/2 infinity.
Yeah, that's why I said start from left to right. In other words, always start from negative infinity, assuming it's in your domain. And in
Okay.
this case, it is. When you have all real numbers except for a couple of numbers, those are easy. In other words, you just have to make sure that the only two numbers that are not in your interval are 0 and 1/2. And these are not. Notice the parentheses next to the zeros. That means it cannot be 0. Notice the parentheses next to the 1/2. It cannot be 1/2. Every other
Okay.
number on the number line, it can be.
Alrighty.
All right.
Cool. Can you scroll back up to the big one real quick and then I'll screenshot it?
Uh-huh.
And then I think that'll honestly be all I have for right now.
Okay.
I'm gonna be using you a lot, like almost 2 classes like every day, because I
Okay.
need to catch up on some work.
Okay.
And so pretty much tomorrow and Sunday, I'm gonna be using you a lot. So,
That's fine. Absolutely
all
fine.
right.
You're welcome to
Thank you.
come whenever I have availability.
All right, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Mary. Talk to you
All right.
next time. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.